Hey y'all, welcome to 5149. I'm James Lee, and today I'm going to be talking to you about why companies are becoming more evil, or at least seemingly more. Now, I think they are really just becoming more evil.
Unfortunately, taking action, it cost me my job.
Cases we got.
We have plenty of workers that haven't been to work for the entire month of March because they're scared for their lives. These are people that are being unpaid right now.
And I walked out because it was online. They told me there was one case in the building and it's actually 11, so I don't feel safe.
Because I tried to stand up for something that's right, the company decided to retaliate against me today and they terminated me. I'm still going to continue to fight for those people inside that building.
As you can see here, the coronavirus pandemic has definitely brought to light this deep divide between management and the workers. And I think, to be fair, there's always going to be tension between management and the rank and file. But I think over the last several years, honestly, over the past several decades, management has slowly but surely consolidated their power over the workers. And with more power comes more opportunity to wield that power. And that's the first thing that I want to talk about today in terms of corporations becoming more evil is this consolidation, not only in terms of management over the workers, but also the consolidations of large corporations in general.
In 1978, the 100 largest publicly traded firms earned 48% of all the income earned by all publicly traded companies. That number was 52.8% in 95, and it is now over 85%.
I mean, that's pretty crazy scary how corporations, fewer and fewer corporations, have more and more market share. And this is happening across all different industries, including some of our favorites like beer. I mean, if you take a look at beer, I have here 10 of the most valuable beer brands in the world. Look at this. 7 of the top 10 beers are owned by the same company, AB InBev, which is kind of crazy. So I think this lack of choice leads corporations, gives them the leeway to do bad things. And real tangible examples of this are like United Airlines. I don't know, a few years ago, they dragged this dude off the airplane, busted up his nose real bad. People were calling for a boycott of United Airlines all over the place. However, I don't think that actually happened. It's because we don't actually have a choice. At certain locations, United just owns all the market share. You have places like Newark, New Jersey. If you live there, you really don't have a lot of choice as far as your airline. So that boycott did not happen. And Amazon is another great example of this because they have such great service. They can pretty much do whatever they want. I mean, I can't think of any other place I can get this type of 2-day delivery or even 1 day or Prime Now, Prime Today. I don't even know how they do this. And it's really hard for the consumer to say, yeah, Amazon is treating their workers badly, so therefore I won't order from Amazon. It's very difficult to do that because there's no other like service out there. I don't know, Jet.com, Walmart, I'm not even sure if they're better for their workers. So as you can see, this lack of choice is very, very bad for the consumer and allows companies to act in an evil way, whether it be towards consumers, such as in the case of United, or towards their own workers like Amazon. And in terms of relationships between the management and the workers, which is the second thing I want to touch on, is I'm seeing some examples of deliberate attempts for the company to decouple the two. And one example that I want to highlight here is the example of Boeing. There's actually a great article from The Atlantic that's titled "The Long Forgotten Flight That Sent Boeing Off Course. A company once driven by engineers became driven by finance." So essentially, Boeing moved their headquarters from Seattle, where all of the manufacturing and assembly was being done, to Chicago. And this article talks about the impact of that change. And that change culminated with the Boeing 737 MAX disaster. The Boeing 737 MAX example is probably the worst case scenario of what could happen when you decouple your core business from your quote-unquote executive stakeholders. You see decisions being made in a vacuum where things look really good on paper, like the plane is, very good for the customer. You don't have to retrain pilots, but that led to a slew of very poor engineering decisions that ended up with a plane that really couldn't fly all that good and had major safety problems that, right now, it is still grounded. The 737 MAX has not flown in over a year. When decisions are made that way, people die. So you could argue that these type of moves also make corporations more evil. And that's the third thing I want to drill into is who's making these decisions and how they're being made. And that we have to dive into the education piece. So if you examine a lot of executives at these big corporations, one thing they'll have in common is that they'll probably have an MBA degree. So I want to dive into what is being taught and what is not being taught. So just full disclosure, I graduated from New York University Stern School of Business. And so what I'm going to be talking about is specific to that school. However, I do think it's probably applicable to many other business schools as well. So I want to give some credit here to begin with is that all of us were required to take a course called Professional Responsibilities. And that talked about the morals and ethics of business. However, it was only a 3-day course. So it was done over 3 weekends to learn about everything that you had to learn about business and ethics. And so that kind of shows the priorities of the business school. I think that was done more so for compliance to say, hey, our students went through this training, but it wasn't a major focus. Now, here are some examples of what was taught. In another course called Managing Growing Companies, there was a whole lesson on union busting, how to, the different techniques of how you would deal with that situation. Now, I don't have the notes from that. I would share with you, but I don't have the notes from that because I chucked it. What I do remember is they talked about different techniques like training your white-collar employees or the people who worked in the corporate office how to fix phone line poles. And so if your workers wanted to strike, you could still keep the operations up, all different things like that. I mean, can you imagine this? We're talking about union busting in a business course, managing growing companies, saying if you're managing a growing company, you're going to have to deal with busting unions. You better know how to do that. And just to give some context on this course, there was also a lesson on prenuptial agreements as it relates to business. So take that, just mull on that for a second. Another example I want to point out here is from a strategy course. So this is one of the what they call a core course. Everybody has to take this business strategy course. And one section of the course talked about corporate social responsibility. So that is the idea that companies have a responsibility that extends beyond making money and profits. It's sort of about the ethical, moral, and social considerations you have to think about when you make business decisions. So I do have some notes on this and what we were taught here. And the reason why I have these notes, fun fact, is that in business school, a lot of times we pool all our notes together in an open book test type of situation. And so I would say the school part in business school, you can put some big quotations around that in terms of how much school is actually happening. A lot of business, I don't know how much school. So that's just a little side note there. But let's dive into these notes. Corporate social responsibility, CSR, should really be evaluated on expected returns like capital and only aim for the minimum CSR needed. In the notes here, it also goes back to a previous point here that I made about competitive markets and consolidation is that if you have a competitive market, customers have the ability to switch, but you still just need to meet the minimum CSR. When cost is low and worth the competitive advantage and the reputational capital, so you want to view CSR just like capital investment. So it boils down to this. If the future leaders of America are being trained in this way when they're taught in school where it's supposed to be the most pure of ideas, if you're training them to think in this way that everything is related to return on capital or some other financial metric, then of course they're going to make these decisions in this way. If they're corrupted young, they're going to continue to be corrupted as they get older. It's not going to get any better as you increase in responsibility and increase in prestige. That's just not going to happen. So after talking about all of this, I guess my feeling is that there are definitely some good people out there in business that really care about the consumer, that they really care about their workers. But on a whole, I think corporations are going to continue to get more evil unless something huge changes, because I don't see a lot of collaboration happening between management and the workers. I don't think this dynamic will continue to change. In fact, I think, like the Boeing example, there's going to be additional and increased effort to separate these two groups. And then secondly, the education piece. If business schools continue to emphasize metrics, financial metrics specifically, like return on invested capital, then of course these moral and ethical and environmental concerns are going to go by the wayside, and corporations, unfortunately, are just going to continue on this path of becoming more evil. Hey y'all, thanks for watching 5149. Really appreciate your support. Love to hear from you on your thoughts on whether you think corporations are becoming more evil, less evil. If you're a manager, love to hear about how you view the workers. Opposite side, workers, love to hear how you feel about management. Please, as always, like and subscribe, support independent media, and I'll see you next time.